And welcome back to the NFLandU Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Hayden Vassar, and we're coming to you on Monday, just like we said we would. Fresh off Wild Card Weekend, people. And wow, what a Wild Card Weekend that was. All 4 games came down to the wire, and you could at least argue 3 of them were great games. I'll give credit to the 4th one, the last one. It was okay. Maybe not the best in the world, but it did its job. There were upsets abound, legacies were made or broken in some cases, narratives definitely were both created and destroyed at the same time, and teams advanced and others got sent packing. It was a fun weekend of football. This wild card weekend was the ultimate testament that in football, much like in life, anything is possible and can happen, as we saw throughout the entire weekend. When it's playoff time, there's an old adage that you should throw out the record books of all teams involved because nothing you have done up till now matters. What matters is what you do now. And this weekend was the ultimate testament of that. And what happened this weekend, what happened right now, was nothing short of amazing, beautiful, fun, and exciting all at the same time. So we're going to get into all 4 games that happened this weekend. But first, we want to talk about a little bit of news because stuff did happen that happened off the football field this over the course of the last couple days. And we'll start with the Los Angeles Rams. If you remember a couple weeks ago after the Rams lost that Saturday night game to the San Francisco 49ers, Mike Silver, one of the NFL Network's reporters, said that there could be changes on the defensive side of the ball on the coaching staff for the Rams this offseason. And he specifically speculated on Wade Phillips being gone. And we talked about that on the podcast, and we said it was something to keep an eye on. Well, that time has now officially come. As of today, Monday, the Rams officially made it known that Wade Phillips, their defensive coordinator, will no longer be with the team. He has been let go, fired, however you want to phrase it, has been let go, and the Rams now need a new defensive coordinator. Wade Phillips has been the DC in LA for, 3 years? Ever since Sean McVay took over. They brought in Wade Phillips because Sean McVay was coming into his very first head coaching job, and he needed, in my opinion, a guy to help him get some credence with the locker room. Because Wade Phillips had been a head coach with the Cowboys before for a couple of years. He had won a Super Bowl as the defensive coordinator for the Broncos in 2015. So Wade Phillips was a very experienced head coach that could still get the job done, and he was brought on with McVay to help the transition of power move smoothly. And now that I don't even want to say that the Rams defense played bad this year, because for the most part as a whole, I think they were an above average defense. It's just it was a down year for them, and it's easy to blame an assistant coordinator for something that there's a larger problem with the Rams. Is that they're more of a team in transition right now. In all honesty, I really think their defense played good. The last game that they had against the 49ers was really bad for their defense, especially that long catch by, who was it, Deebo Samuel, I think it was. Anyway, it left a bad taste on a lot of Rams fans' mouths, and now Wade Phillips is gone as a result. Now, it's a long offseason, so we don't know who exactly is going to be the front runner for this job, but it's something that will be figured out hopefully soon for the Rams, because they're aiming to bounce back pretty quick next year, have another winning season, and be back in the playoffs. But it's a tough blow because I think Wade Phillips is still a good coach. He could still get the job done. In fact, I think the Rams could have won the Super Bowl last year if their offense had shown up for at least 1 or 2 drives. His defense was playing that well at a high stage like that. And like I said, I still think they played well this year. It's just when a team has a down year and changes need to be made, it's usually the assistant coaches that get axed first. And this time it was Wade Phillips, which sucks because, like I said, I still think he's a good coach. So once again, Rams announced today that defensive coordinator Wade Phillips has been fired, and they are now looking for a new defensive coordinator. Now, moving on to the best bit of news possible. Oh, I'm so excited for this one. So, there I am, sitting there Sunday watching the Eagles-Seahawks game. It's been an entire week of the Cowboys not knowing what they're going to do with Jason Garrett. There's reports saying that Garrett's still lobbying for his job. There's reports saying that that they've interviewed multiple head coaching candidates while Garrett is still in the building working, which makes no sense. And then Sunday at around just probably a bit before halftime, if I remember correctly, of the Eagles game, Jay Glazer was the first one to report it, that he's the NFL reporter for Fox, that the Cowboys have finally fired Jason Garrett as the head coach. And I was so happy. And then you see Ian Rappaport reporting it, then Adam Schefter, then Jane Slater's reporting it, and then it's finally setting in that the scourge has finally been lifted. I celebrated. I almost cried. I was so happy. I texted a friend, my great friend Chance, and I told him this is bigger to me than any win the Cowboys have ever had in my lifetime. That's how important it was for them to move on from him. Because I've lambasted him enough on this podcast. I feel like that poor man's been through enough this week with what Jerry Jones has done for him. But it felt so great to finally get rid of him. It was long overdue. It's something that honestly should have happened years ago. So when I was sitting here writing my notes last night, I wrote down a couple names for who I would like to see be the new head coach of the Cowboys. And I would like to read you these names, and you tell me what you think, okay? This was before the news this morning, okay? Here's the candidates in order and how I listed them. Mike McCarthy, one of the Ravens coordinators, Mike McCarthy, Jim Caldwell, Lincoln Riley, and you can't forget Mike McCarthy. That is exactly how I wrote that list. And then I wake up this morning, and Mike McCarthy has been hired as the head coach. And I am excited. I'm excited. I really am. Now, I've seen a lot of slander from Mike McCarthy online. The former Green Bay Packers head coach who was there for about 13 years, won a Super Bowl. He did leave a lot of bad taste in people's mouths towards the end. People call him stale and predictable, and that sort of thing. And I did call him that as well towards the end, but it does sound like he's learned and grown somewhat as a coach this year that he spent off from football. So I'm excited about that. Plus the prospect that he's going to be a guy that's at least somewhat into analytics. If you've read anything about Mike McCarthy the last 2 weeks, the massive PR campaign that he's got like this kind of like 14-person flow chart on how he wants to introduce analytics into his new team. That is very promising to me because the Cowboys under Jason Garrett have been infamously non-analytical, that they don't view it as a priority. And in an age where the best teams in football, the Ravens, for example, are overtly analytical. In fact, the Eagles won a freaking Super Bowl because of analytics. And for the Cowboys to have sat there these last 10 years and say, we don't believe in analytics, it's not a priority, is just flat out insulting. I don't care if you're for or against analytics. You should be doing everything in your power as a team to win. And in my opinion, Mike McCarthy agrees with that statement, which is why I'm happy to have him. Mike McCarthy is also a quarterback's coach. Brett Favre has been on the record that towards the end of his career in Green Bay, right when Mike McCarthy was coming on, he helped rejuvenate Favre's career. In fact, Brett Favre went on a series, I think it was like Sirius XM radio today, and said that if anybody can succeed in Dallas with the Jerry Jones ownership, it's Mike McCarthy, which is awesome. Now, this is the kind of hire that Dallas needs because their roster is so talented. It's one of the most talented rosters in the league. They have no reason being 8-8. And now you're bringing in a head coach who has been the multiple NFC championship games, won a Super Bowl. This is the absolute perfect hire. And I know it's not sexy. It's not. Somebody compared it to the hire as going to Taco Bell at 2 a.m. It's okay. It's not going to knock your socks off, and you're just hoping not to get food poisoned. And I think that's a very low bar. I would more compare it to McDonald's. That hiring Mike McCarthy, it gets the job done. Is it flashy? Are you going to brag about it? No. But hey, Friday night, nothing going on. Why not? So I think some people really like McDonald's, and some people think it's not that good. That sounds like Mike McCarthy to me. Now, I do want to see what he's going to be like as a head coach first, whether he's that play calling that we saw towards the end of his tenure in Green Bay is still going to be stale and predictable. But it sounds like he wants to keep Kellen Moore, the Cowboys offensive coordinator, on for another year, which is great. I think everybody that is a fan of the Cowboys should be happy about that. It also sounds like he's already found his defensive coordinator, as they are hiring the Saints linebackers coach to come be the defensive coordinator, who the last time he was a defensive coordinator, I'm forgetting the man's name right now, but he was the Falcons defensive coordinator from like 2014 to 2016, something like that. And they were, I'm not looking at the stats, but if I remember correctly, they were solid on defense in those times. So I think it's a really, really good hire. I'm more positive about it than I've seen most people online be. I think everybody online was really waiting for Lincoln Riley to walk through the door, and I really don't think that was going to happen. Lincoln Riley seems very confident and comfortable at the University of Oklahoma, but I really think this is a good hire for the Cowboys. And by the way, literally anything is better than Jason Garrett. And by the way, did anybody else see that report that Mike McCarthy allegedly spent the night at Jerry Jones' home over the weekend? You got Jason Garrett begging for his job, and the new head coach is literally shacked up at Jerry Jones' house. Oh, you know what's even funnier? As Greg Rosenthal of the NFL Network pointed out, Mike McCarthy and Jason Garrett have the same agent. So while one head coach is begging for his job, the other one is asking for spare towels at the Joneses' house. The jokes literally write themselves. This is too much. So every time the Cowboys win, it's a sleepover at the Joneses' house, apparently. So once again, Cowboys fire head coach Jason Garrett, and that makes me so happy to report. Fires head coach Jason Garrett and hires former Packers head coach, Super Bowl winning head coach, Mike McCarthy. And it should be fun in Dallas. It should really be fun. So that's it for our news. Just a couple coaching moves, all this and that. So we're going to get into the games. I want to say we went in our picks really quick. We went 2-2 in our picks, which, that's okay. Really wanted to go, perfect this playoff season, but beggars can't be choosers. So when we started this show, I said at least 3 out of the 4 games were very exciting and down to the wire. And one of them did come down to the wire, but it wasn't all that exciting. And that's the game I want to start with. The last game up over the wild card slate. Seattle at Philadelphia. Seattle goes into Philadelphia and wins 17-9 in a very sloppy, ugly performance by both teams. The Eagles fought admirably in this game. I think that needs to be said first and foremost. They fought admirably. I can't talk. You know what I'm trying to say. They fought till the bitter end. But in the end, it was just way too much for one team to overcome with so many injuries as Seattle takes a tough win on the road. So, Eagles came into this game already banged up. Zach Ertz with his jacked up ribs. Lane Johnson didn't even start on their offensive line, so they were hurt everywhere. And then suffered the worst injury of them all about halfway through the first half. Wasn't it like early second quarter when it happened? Carson Wentz takes off on a scramble, dives head first, and Jadeveon Clowney comes up from behind and hits Carson Wentz in the back of the head with his own helmet. Wentz's head then bounces off the turf, and he's ruled out for the rest of the game with a concussion. And I don't really think Jadeveon Clowney has been a dirty player for most of his career, but that wasn't... I think that was a dirty hit, and it should have been flagged, and he's probably going to get fined for it. But my heart broke for Carson Wentz on that play. Poor guy has fought tooth and nail to get back to this point. This was his first playoff start in his entire career. This is his 4th season in Philadelphia, and this is his first playoff start. And he barely got to play like a quarter and a half before he's taken out with injury again. It just didn't seem fair. So Carson Wentz comes out, and 40-year-old Josh McCown comes in. And let me tell you what, the stats don't really indicate it, because McCown went 18-24, 174 yards, and 6 sacks. That's his entire stat line. McCown fought his heart out and gave the Eagles ample opportunity For a guy that's 40 years old, in the cold, coming in on short notice, he gave you everything you could have asked for from a backup quarterback. He fought his heart out, and after the game, you saw him crying in the hallway with Zach Ertz, and your heart really broke for these Eagles. It really did. And that's coming from a Cowboys fan. Oh God, what? I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. McCown, I don't know why I said Wentz. Josh McCown starts for the rest of the game, and as I mentioned before, no Lane Johnson for this Eagles offensive line, and I think they were already down another starter as well. They could not protect anybody with that offensive line. Seattle racked up 7 sacks in this game, which is a season high for them. They had 28 the entire year. That's second fewest in the league. And they came in and just dominated the Philadelphia offensive line like it was nothing. The Seahawks, but even though that this Eagles team is beat up, they can't protect either quarterback. Seattle just could not put this team away. For the love of God, they're hanging around with 5 minutes left in the game. It's ridiculous, and it makes no sense. Now, it had to do with the fact that Seattle just kept shooting themselves in the foot. They were penalized 11 times for 114 total yards. That really helped the Eagles stay alive and move the football. It also helped that Seattle really couldn't get a run game going. Russell Wilson was their leading rusher, and he had 54 total yards of rushing? The Travis Homer and Marshawn Lynch tandem combined for 17 carries for 30 yards or something like that. Not the best day for Seattle rushing. But the difference maker in this game was DK Metcalf, the rookie wide receiver for Seattle. The guy who was taken at the end of the second round, who people said wasn't going to work out in the league because he had a limited route running tree and his 3-cone time at the combine wasn't good. They said he wouldn't work out. Well, you know what DK Metcalf did? DK Metcalf caught 7 passes for 160 yards and 1 touchdown. That touchdown was a 53-yard touchdown catch. DK was incredible, and he was eating this Eagles secondary alive. In fact, DK made history in this game. He became he had the biggest game by a rookie receiver in NFL playoff history. No rookie player ever had more receiving yards in a playoff game than DK Metcalf this past Sunday. He was just incredible. He was on fire. And when the game mattered most, when Seattle got the ball back and they needed a first down to basically ice the game, who was there to make a big catch? DK Metcalf was. He has been a strong player, and it still amazes me that he was still there at the end of the second round. Because if the draft were to re-happen, he probably goes at bare minimum in the top 20. That's how good he's played this year. Speaking of passing, Russell Wilson, he had a solid day. He was 18-30 for 325, 1 touchdown, 1 sack. But this is just who Seattle is. They play these close games against everybody. They never blow anybody out, even though they're a much better team than this Eagles roster, which is so odd. So very, very odd. Seattle let them hang around for way too long, just could not put them away. In fact, that DK Metcalf touchdown came about halfway through the third quarter, which put them up 17-6. All the Eagles could do was kick field goals. So I don't know if Seattle was really worried about it, but they just struggle to put games away and blow out anybody. This should be a team that they should beat up. No Carson Wentz, no offensive line, no wide receivers. I still struggle as to why Seattle can't blow teams out. But they win and they move on, and they get to play. Oh, here's your reward, Seattle. You get to go to Lambeau Field next week. Congratulations. So Seattle wins and moves on. But for the Eagles, you weren't supposed to be here. Everybody counted you out. Everybody said you were too injury prone, that you were too mistake prone. You lost to the Dolphins, and everybody said you were dead in the water and you wouldn't go anywhere, including me. Decimated by injuries, everyone said you wouldn't do anything. Yet there you were in a one-score game late in the fourth quarter with the Seattle Seahawks team that is much better than you. You refuse to say die. And for that, you have my respect. And that's coming from a Cowboys fan, so you know it means something. If the Eagles can stay healthy next year, they're going to be a very good team. That's if they can stay healthy. Because it felt like there was some cosmic force out to get them this year. But once again, they put up a valiant effort and a tough one. And Seattle wins 17-9, and Seattle's moving on to the divisional round. And we're moving on to game of the weekend. Buffalo at Houston. So I'm going to give you the final score, and then we're just going to go from the beginning to the end of this game. Because there's no real right way to talk about what we saw on Saturday in this game. Texans win this one 22-19 in overtime. And let's get into it. As the Bills suffer an insane collapse and the absolute most bonkers game of the weekend as Watson proves just how electric he can be. So, in come both these teams. Bills came out of the gate white hot. Josh Allen is running all over the field. Their offense is electric. It's doing trick things. I mean, John Brown threw a freaking touchdown pass to Josh Allen to start the game. And you're thinking, oh my gosh, these Bills are here and they're for real. They're getting tricky in a big spot, people. And they looked more than ready for the moment. They looked like they were ready to thrive, and they looked like they were ready to kick some ass. But that touchdown pass that John Brown threw to Josh Allen was the only touchdown that the Bills would score on this day. I know that sounds ominous, but it didn't feel ominous at first. Because the Bills' offense was clicking. It was rolling. They were racking up yards. They were moving downfield. They were doing everything and anything they wanted to this Texans team, who just came out flat. In fact, the Texans' offense was the flattest of the units, as they racked up 81 total yards of offense in the first half, and Watson got sacked, like 4 times in the first half? And you're thinking, oh God, here we go again with the Texans. Another flat, wild card game where they're about to get blown out at home. Because we talked about that on Friday, that they don't have a good playoff history under Bill O'Brien. And it looked like history was well on its way to repeating itself. As the Bills racked up a ton of yardage at halftime, they go into halftime up 13-0. And you're thinking, oh God, it's the same old with this Texans team. They just can't get out of their own way. So we come out of halftime. Bills get the ball. They get into the red zone. And I know it's been talked about a little bit too much, and it wasn't as massive as Joe Tessitore on the announce crew made it out to be. But that J.J. Watt sack on Josh Allen on third down was kind of a big deal. J.J. Watt, who came back from a torn pectoral muscle in late October, don't know how he did it, had a monster game in this one, but that sack on third down held the Bills to a field goal. Bills then go up 16-0, and that left the door open just a tad, just a crack. Like I said, it wasn't as massive as Joe Tessitore made it out to be. He made it out to be like the greatest Houston Texans play in franchise history. It was a big play, and it swayed momentum just a tiny, tiny bit. It woke up his teammates on the sideline. Texans now have the ball back. They're down 16-0. And a couple different sports websites on Twitter were saying, they were, crunching numbers, and they were saying, in terms of mathematics, the Bills currently have like a 91% chance to win this game. So everything was going the Bills' way is what I'm saying. They're about halfway through the third quarter, up 16-0. Nothing can go wrong. Until everything that could go wrong did go wrong for the Bills. Texans get the ball back, like I said, down 16-0. And Deshaun Watson embarks on a 9-play, 75-yard touchdown drive where he gets DeAndre Hopkins his first couple catches of the game. And Deshaun Watson rushes for the touchdown. He also rushes for the 2-point conversion. There's 8 points right there. Now it's an 8-point game. And that was the moment, in my opinion, that was the moment the Bills lost the game. Because as soon as that touchdown is scored, it cuts to the Bills sideline, and they looked absolutely shell-shocked. Not the defense, the offense. Specifically, Josh Allen. That was the moment I saw fear in that young man's eyes. And I said it out loud. He just looked scared. He looked terrified. So now it's an 8-point game. Bills offense has to come out. They don't have to make a big play or drive right now, but you know they're going to have to make one at some point. And the Bills, they just look terrified, like I said. And the Bills offense does nothing. For the vast majority of the second half, they do nothing. They racked up about, 125 total yards of offense in the second half and overtime. And Josh Allen is just continuing to unravel. There were a couple plays in the first half where he almost threw a pick six and he almost fumbled. So he was flirting with danger throughout the entire game. Then late in the second half, he had that insane lateral, sweet Jesus, young man, where he was running downfield and he tried to lateral it to an offensive lineman. Like, what in the blue hell are you doing? And then there was the fumble, I remember correctly. Josh Allen was just imploding, and the Texans rack off 19 unanswered points to take a 19-16 lead late in this game. So Josh Allen then has to come out. He's somehow able to put together a competent drive to get the Bills in field goal range. Steven Hauschka kicks it through. We're tied at 19, and we go to overtime. Now, in overtime, both teams exchange punts. And if I remember correctly, in overtime, that's when Josh Allen uncorked that massive bomb downfield into double coverage for the fullback. Good Lord, what are you doing, young man? But like I said, they exchange punts. Texans get the ball back, and that's when it happened. If I remember correctly, it was a third down play. And Deshaun Watson drops back to pass, and two different Buffalo defenders come off opposite sides of the offensive line. And both of them have Deshaun Watson dead to rights. There is no possible way he can escape this play. They meet at Deshaun Watson, sandwich him, and he somehow escapes out the back. Breaks free, rolls out, and hits, what was his name? Tyron Jones. For a 34-yard completion that sets up at the Bills' 10-yard line. Bill O'Brien then sends out Kaimi Fairbairn to knock up the field goal kick, hits it, walks it off. Texans win as Deshaun Watson pulled out a literal Michael Jordan-like move because, his head coach in college, Dabo Swinney, compared Deshaun Watson to Michael Jordan, and that's what that was. They're going to be playing that play, the escape from the two defensive linemen, the scramble, and then the throw to Jones for every highlight reel ever for the rest of time about Deshaun Watson. That was just pure magic. And it was a tale of two halves, more like a tale of a quarter and a half, because for 2.5 quarters, the Bills were a better team. Their matchups were winning, all this and that. Josh Allen could do no wrong. But then, halfway through the third quarter, the Texans said, we're done messing around. Their star power took over. Bills got scared. Josh Allen clamped up, and their coaching got a little too conservative for my liking, and it cost them the game. Let's get you some stats real quick. Deshaun Watson went 20-25 for 247 yards, 1 touchdown, 7 sacks. It was a theme throughout the game that, the Texans really couldn't protect Watson. And he also had 14 rushes for 55 yards and 1 touchdown. Josh Allen went 24-46 for 264 yards, 3 sacks, 9 rushes for 92 yards. But it was just a monumental collapse by the Bills. By all intents and purposes, if you're up 16-0 halfway through the third quarter and you have a really good defense, you should win that game. I don't care how good the Texans are. You should win that game. But the Bills didn't. And for the Bills, this just continues their long, storied, tormented postseason history. Dating back to the 4 Super Bowls in the 90s. Not having a playoff win this century. They finally felt good enough they finally felt that they were good enough to win a playoff game. And they were for most of the game. And then they just screwed themselves out of it. Bad play by Allen in the offense, conservative coaching, and that defense, like I said, it gave up a 16-0 lead. At some point, you just got to make a stop. Good defenses don't blow 16-0 leads. And in all honesty, if you blow a lead like that, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs, in my opinion. Good teams don't do that. I want to say it'll be okay, Bills fans. I really do. I want to say that your defense is young and you're going to keep most of your talent. You still got your head coach, and Josh Allen will learn and grow from this mistake. I want to say it'll be okay and you'll be back. But history says you regress. Not as Bills, but as a team that builds around defense. History says you don't go well from here. Just ask the Jaguars from 2017. They were supposed to be back, weren't they? Look where they are now. 2 straight losing seasons. Look at the Chicago Bears from last year. They were supposed to be back. Now they're 8-8 and severely debating what to do with their quarterback. I want to say it'll be okay, and I want to say you'll be back. And I truly hope you are, because the good people of Buffalo deserve a win like this. But I just don't know. It'll be a long and interesting offseason for the Buffalo Bills as they take this and have to sit on it and stew for the next couple months. For the Texans, they deserve an insane amount of credit for what they pulled off. They have a long history of not performing well in these moments, and when the moment came and it looked like it was almost too big for them, they buckled down, came back, and won. They deserve so much credit for that. Now, they're still far from perfect, like I said. They gave up 7 sacks. Against the Bills, apparently, you can still win when you do that. But when you play other teams like the Chiefs and Ravens, they're not going to let you get away with that. They're just not. They're going to have to do better next week. And the Chiefs and the Texans have shown you that they can play really great football. Maybe not always, but they have the ability to do so. And that should at least scare other teams. Once again, Bills blow an insane second half lead, and Texans win 22-19 in overtime. And we're moving on. Back to the NFC for the second of the overtime games this weekend. Minnesota at New Orleans. Vikings win 26-20. Vikings win an absolute thriller in overtime as Kirk Cousins finally wins the big game. And the Saints suffer another heartbreaking loss in the playoffs. And my question for you is, you like that? You like that? Because Kirk Cousins likes that. The Vikings defense came to play in this one, as they were able to shut down a white-hot Saints offense that, remember, was averaging like 40 points a game coming into this one. They held them to 20 points. They racked up like 300 yards, and they forced 2 turnovers. The Vikings became the first team this season to force the Saints to turn the ball over twice. Remember, the Saints set an NFL record for fewest turnovers in a regular season with 8. And here they are throwing an interception and Drew Brees fumbling the ball as the Vikings defense came to play. And they shut down the Saints offense. They gave their team ample opportunities to win this game. This Vikings defense just came in and shut them down, as the Saints just looked about as uncharacteristic as they have all season. They were missing field goals. The 2 turnovers, like I mentioned, it just felt like from the beginning it was not their day. And the Vikings offense rode a very fresh Dalvin Cook like there was no tomorrow. Dalvin Cook had 28 rushes for 94 yards and 2 touchdowns. He had like 30 reception yards too, so he went over 100 scrimmage yards in this game. And it started to get really nerve-wracking for Saints fans in the third quarter, about halfway through the third quarter, as the Vikings went up 20-10. Now they're up 10 points in the Def Dome, and people are starting to get really nervous. Like, really, really nervous. So, Saints offense has kind of no-showed the game. They haven't really looked like themselves. And time is starting to become their enemy. They're running out of time fast. Then the fourth quarter starts. And then things change. Saints offense finally wakes up as they inject more Taysom Hill into the offense. They score 10 unanswered points to tie it at 20 and go into overtime. And you're thinking, all right, it's overtime. NFL overtime is stupid because whoever gets the ball first is likely to win. And that's exactly what happened, and that's why NFL overtime is stupid. Vikings win the toss. They choose to receive, and Kirk Cousins finally gets his big-time moment. He uncorks a 42-yard bomb to Adam Thielen that gets them right down to the goal line. And Troy Aikman, who was on the broadcast, said it best. That was Kirk Cousins' best throw of his career. And you will not hear me argue that one. That was a picture-perfect throw to Adam Thielen, who had a great day in this one. He went over 100 yards, if I remember correctly. I don't know why I didn't write down his stats in my notes. But he went over 100 receiving yards in his first game that he was probably fully healthy, and it showed. So he sets up the Vikings at the goal line. Couple plays later, Cousins drops back, finds Rudolph in the back of the end zone for a touchdown to win the game. And would you look at that, Kirk Cousins had two big plays on a drive to win a game in the playoffs, on the road. Big time win for Kirk Cousins. Now can we finally stop hating on that poor man? The Vikings finally got their big win on the road, and Cousins won it. For one moment, Cousins justified all that money they paid him over a year ago. That fully guaranteed, $90 million contract? He justified every penny for it for one moment, and it was beautiful. For a guy that's been hated on so much over the years, to finally have his moment in the sun, it was beautiful. And that locker room speech where he told the guys, "You like that? You like that?" That was really nice, and it was good for him. I've been a Kirk Cousins apologist for years, and I felt like a very gratifying moment to finally have him do it. Now, there was a bit of controversy on the touchdown catch, as the Saints were arguing that Kyle Rudolph, the tight end who caught the pass, pushed off of his defender, and in my opinion, he did. He did push off, and that probably could have been a flag. But, it's playoff time, Saints, referees, pass interference. It always seems to come down to something wonky for the Saints, doesn't it? It just always feels like this. I do think Kyle Rudolph pushed off, in my opinion, but the refs apparently didn't think so, and neither did the review center, and they waved the game off. And you got to feel sorry for the Saints. Another heartbreaking playoff exit, third year in a row. It's kind of becoming tradition like Christmas, where they go into the playoffs hot as the sun, and just ended it as about as heartbreaking as possible. You really got to feel for them. They were a better team for most of the season, but they weren't a better team in this game. They just weren't. But the better team doesn't always win, like I was arguing earlier in the show. They do have a legitimate gripe, as Rudolph did push off. But isn't it a little ironic that this season it also comes down to pass interference with the Saints at the bell? It's very sad. For the Vikings, they finally got the big win, like I said. And we can finally stop with the Kirk Cousins slander. If that Vikings defense can play up to their potential like they did in this game, that Vikings team is going to be a very tough out for people. Because they showed they can go on the road against a good offense and shut them down. That's more than enough for me, in my opinion. They said that they had watched what the Atlanta Falcons did to the Saints earlier in the year, and they used a lot of that against the Saints. So here's the thing. The Vikings now have to go on the road to play San Francisco. And you know who is one of the few teams in the NFL this season to beat San Francisco? The Atlanta Falcons, whose defense was able to slow down the San Francisco 49ers. So Vikings, just go back to the tape and watch it again. That's all I got to say. Congratulations to the Vikings. They deserve a ton of praise. And maybe it's just a deal where in the playoffs, the Vikings just have the Saints' number. It's now the second time in, 3 years where the Vikings have beaten the Saints in the playoffs? And both times you could argue that the Saints are a better team on paper. It's weird and it doesn't make sense, but that's what the playoffs are. Anybody has a shot, and it does not matter who you are. Once again, Vikings win a thriller 26-20 in overtime. And we're moving on to the last game. And what a game this was. Tennessee at New England. Titans win 20-13. Winter Storm Derrick Henry hits New England about as hard as you can hit somebody. as the Titans finally free us from the scourge that is the New England Patriots shadow on the AFC playoffs. And you know what? That don't just smell like upset. That is an upset. The Pats simply had no answer for Derrick Henry, who celebrated a birthday on this day, the game day. Derrick Henry went 34 rushes, 182 yards, and 1 touchdown. It all flowed through Henry. Every little bit was about Derrick Henry. And it almost felt like the Patriots knew it was coming, but just couldn't stop him. At times, he was getting like 7-6 yards a carry. It was ridiculous at times. But it had to go through Henry because Ryan Tannehill put up a very less than desirable stat line for the Titans through the air, because Ryan Tannehill went 8 of 15 for 72 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 sack. As the Patriots defense was able to shut down the Titans pass offense, they just couldn't stop the run. They just could not stop the run to save their lives. And it was a back and forth first half in the early going. You know, Titans score, I think they kicked a field goal early. No, they didn't kick a field goal. They scored a touchdown on their first drive. Tannehill threw a touchdown pass. They're up 7-0. You're thinking, all right, Titans are here. They're showing they're not afraid. And New England comes back. They score 10 unanswered. Actually 13 unanswered to go up 13-7. And it's right before halftime. And you're thinking, this is just what the Pats want. It may not be pretty, but they're going to have a lead going into halftime. Then here come the Titans. They score quickly right before halftime to go up 14-13 going into halftime. And you're thinking, okay, we're set up for a very interesting second half. We're going to see what happens because we got some late fireworks in the first half. Wonder what's going to happen in the second half. In the second half, there was no scoring. For about 95% of the second half, there was no scoring, as both teams just traded punts. But that was almost as entertaining because you could just feel the drama being ratcheted up every time a team would punt. It was almost like it was building and building and escalating on itself and then crescendoing into the fourth quarter as both teams traded punts. It was so odd because you just felt the shadow of, could this be Tom Brady's last game? Is he really going to go out like this? And the drama reached almost a fever pitch when, halfway through the fourth quarter, Mike Vrabel pulled a Bill Belichick and used multiple penalties on his own team to help waste more clock when he was in that punt formation, false start, delay a game, and it just kept the clock running. That was something Bill Belichick did to the Jets earlier this season. And Bill was so proud when he did it. And then to see him on the sideline losing his ever-loving mind as Vrabel did it to him was so freaking funny. Oh, I can't describe how hard I was laughing. I was losing my mind. It was so great. So now there's, clock's starting to work against the Patriots, and it's starting to feel like the Titans aren't really concerned with going down the field and scoring. Their defense is doing good. It's shutting down the Pats' offense. They're just concerned with running out the clock. That's what the Titans are concerned with, so the Patriots have to do something. And then their Pats get the ball back and get one drive going. And then there was that crucial drop by Julian Edelman, who has been far from reliable this year. And I know he's hurt, and I know he's been banged up the entire season. But he leads this team in drops. And in the biggest moment, in a pretty easy pass, he dropped the ball again for the Patriots. And it leads to a punt. Titans get the ball back. They waste some more clock. They punt it back to New England, who has wasted most of their timeouts. And they literally have, seconds left. And they're set up at their 1-yard line. And you're thinking, my God, Tom Brady's about to go 99 yards, isn't he? He's about to bring him back from the dead, isn't he? Drops back to pass, immediately throws a pick six to ice the game for the Titans. My jaw hit the floor, and everybody immediately went to Twitter to celebrate the win. Because as I said on Twitter after the game, Patriots lose and America wins. It was so odd because the guy who tipped the ball that eventually got intercepted for the pick six used to play for the Patriots. Isn't that ironic? So Titans get the pick six. They kick off to the Patriots. Patriots do the whole, hook and lateral thing, can't get anything going. Time runs out. Titans hang on to win, walk into Foxborough, and knock off the defending Super Bowl champions 14-13. And everybody just seemed stunned. Nobody thought this Titans team could do it. I've been saying it for months that this Titans team is very good and that people were not taking them seriously. You taking them seriously now? That they just went into Foxborough and did that to Brady? I was very impressed by the Titans defense, and I don't know necessarily if it was just because they're playing the Patriots offense, which isn't good, or that they finally turned a corner because they're one of the worst defenses in the playoffs, the Titans defense. They were just slightly above the Texans. That's how not good they are in terms of like total defense and points per game. They're really not that good. But in this game, they played great. They were getting after Brady. They were shutting things down. They didn't let anything get past them. They played phenomenal. And if this Titans defense can play, even like half this well next week, and if that offense can get back on track, there's not a doubt in my mind this team can go into Baltimore and hang with the Ravens. They can go anywhere. They're not afraid of anybody. They can beat anyone. And that's what should scare people, is that this team isn't afraid. And now they have confidence because they just killed off the Patriots. It's been 10 years since the Patriots lost on Wild Card Weekend. The playoffs are now wide open, people, and it's time to enjoy it. Now, speaking to the Patriots real quick, there was a lot of talk during the game. Is this Tom Brady's last game as a Patriot? Because, his contract expires at the end of this season. He'll be a free agent. They can't franchise tag him or any of that. If they want to keep him, they have to give him a new deal. And there's talk, will he retire? Will he go to a different team? And let me be first and foremost. I do not think Tom Brady will retire. There's no way he is going to let his last pass be a pick six. There's no way. I think other quarterbacks might let it slide, but Tom Brady's got an ego. He truly believes he's the greatest thing ever. I know he hides behind that aw shucks demeanor, but he really thinks he's really great. And does a really great quarterback let his last pass be a pick six? No. He'll come back next year. But I think the question that everybody should be asking is not whether does Tom want to come back. It should be, do the Patriots want Tom back? Because he's going to be a 43-year-old quarterback by that time. You can make a legitimate argument that he is not a top 20 quarterback anymore. And I get that, they were filled with injuries this season, that they didn't have any talent. But how much talent do you need to put around Tom Brady to be successful? If you need to have a great offensive line, a historically great tight end like Rob Gronkowski was, and at least two dynamic wide receivers to at least look watchable, then maybe Tom Brady just doesn't have it anymore. So I think the onus is actually on the Patriots organization that maybe it's a better statistical move to move on from Tom Brady and try the unknown. And they don't have a backup plan anymore because the backup plan is currently the starting quarterback for the 49ers that they traded off. So I also don't think their backup plan should be Jarrett Stidham, the guy on their roster. So I do think that the odds-on safe bet is that Tom Brady will be a New England Patriot next year. I think if you're a gambling person, I think that's the one with the best odds. But the one with the least odds is that Tom Brady retires. I think that is absolutely not going to happen. There's no way he's going to let his last play be a pick six. So it's going to be it's going to be an offseason of conjecture and mystery. What will Brady do? Everybody's going to be reading tea leaves and trying to figure out what's going on. And I think we should just sit back and enjoy the fact that the Patriots aren't going to be in the playoffs. For the first time in a while, we can enjoy a free Patriots playoff experience. And it should be fun. I am so excited for this. As most of the nation celebrated the Patriots' fall, it was like the fall of Rome. It felt like people were in the streets celebrating. It was a magical time. It truly was. Twitter was lit, as the kids would say. Once again, Titans go into Foxborough, unseat the defending Super Bowl champions 20-13. And that's it for the recap portion of our podcast. So, those teams won, and their reward, they get to go on for one more week. They get to move into the divisional round of the playoffs. So, here's the slate for this coming weekend. Another 4 games over the course of the next weekend. And here's how it shakes out. On Saturday, you have the number 6 seeded Minnesota Vikings going to San Francisco to take on the number 1 seeded 49ers. That's the early game on Saturday. Then the late game on Saturday. Late game on Saturday. The number 6 seeded Tennessee Titans going to Baltimore to take on the number 1 seeded Ravens. Those are 2 good matchups right there. Then on Sunday, you have the number 4 seeded Houston Texans going to the number 2 seeded Kansas City Chiefs. A rematch of a game that happened earlier this season, was a really fun one, and we'll talk about that on Friday. And then lastly, late game on Sunday. I think this one's at like 8 o'clock. If I remember correctly, it's like 6 or 8 o'clock. It's like, my goodness, that's pretty late. Number 5 seeded Seattle Seahawks going to Green Bay to take on the number 2 seeded Packers. So that's the slate for this coming weekend. So make sure to tune in Friday, where we will preview all 4 of those games, and we'll recap any news that has happened since then. So thanks for coming by and listening to the recap portion. Hope you enjoyed Wildcard Weekend. I know I did. And I'll talk to you Friday. Bye.